It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Dr. Stanley Berry. Hello, Dr. Berry. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing fine, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Nice to have you here.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
So you've got a book out called A Fight for Full Disclosure, and it says it's your debut novel. Why did you decide to write a book?
I decided to write a book because I had a lifelong yearning, essentially, to write a book. Probably ever since I was in high school and college, I wanted to write a book. And I never, for a number of reasons, I didn't pursue writing with the discipline and seriousness that one would have to pursue it in order to write the book. And what happened is, my career went down a completely different path. I started off as an English literature major, and a story grabbed me that I believed needed to be told, and once it grabbed me, it wouldn't let go. And that's what resulted in the book that I wrote, A Fight for Full Disclosure. Okay.
At what point when you were majoring in English did you switch and decide to become a doctor?
Well, it wasn't a simple process, and actually the English background or the English training I got was directly responsible for that decision. I had been in college for 3 years, and I was an English literature major for those 3 years, but I got really disenchanted, if you will, with the humanities approach to education, which is kind of ironic because I'm a big booster of humanities and liberal arts in the education realm. So what happened to me is that I really had this desire that I wanted to learn to do something concrete, and that meant for me most likely learning to do something with my hands as well as my head. And I had dropped out of school a number of times in that 3 years, but the last time I dropped out, I was literally reading an Ernest Hemingway novel entitled A Farewell to Arms, which was about an ambulance driver in World War I. And I was just that impulsive that when I finished the novel, I picked up the phone and called the county ambulance service in Minneapolis, the Hennepin County Ambulance Service, and asked them if they had any jobs open. And they did, and I applied, and I got the job, and I got EMT training, which at the time was 80 hours, and I loved it because one day, literally, we were learning to do CPR, and 2 or 3 days later, I was doing it on somebody on the street to try to keep them alive. And that training progressed to more sophisticated training as an emergency paramedic, which entailed interpreting EKGs and pushing drugs, not selling them, of course, but pushing them through an IV. And I really decided that if I ever got my act together, maybe I could become a physician. And so that's what the genesis of it was.
Oh, that's an interesting story. So how you've been a physician, looks like, for 37 years, is that correct?
Now 38, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah.
All right. And when did the book come out?
The book came out in September of 2021. So I tell people that with my great writing talent, it only took 12 years to finish the book. So it was something I worked on for a very long time.
Well, that happens. I've interviewed other authors that took 15 years to write one book. And and I know other ones that knock out, 5 a year. So it kind of depends.
Right.
Okay. Well, tell us a little about this book, Fight for Full Disclosure.
The book is about a woman who's a mother of three, a single mother of three, who goes into the hospital for routine surgery, and things go wrong. They go just about as wrong as they possibly can, and the hospital then has to decide whether they're going to fess up and tell what really happened, or if they're going to continue their finger pointing and secrecy-driven modus operandi. And the department chair decides that he's going to take on making the truth known for the patients involved, but also for one of his physicians who is involved, who he's convinced isn't the culprit that the hospital is trying to make him out to be. And so the book really is about the pursuit of the truth and some of the consequences that had to be paid by the people concerned in pursuit of the truth. So that's the book in a nutshell.
Was this any part of a true story, or is this fiction? Or
it was inspired by something that happened, but it's heavily fictionalized. I would say that fully 90% of the characters are made up out of whole cloth, and the plot of the story did not occur. So it's truly fiction.
Also on your bio, it says that your father was a professional musician and music teacher?
That's correct, yes.
That's interesting.
Yep. He played the trombone, and he actually got a job in the early 1950s. In fact, I think it was 1950. He got a job teaching music in a prison, which today is probably almost unheard of, but he did that for 16 years. Mm-hmm. And, as it lists in the bio, my mom was a psychiatric social worker and marriage counselor. I got different influences, obviously, from both of them, but both of them believed in hard work and education, and I was the lucky recipient of those values.
Were they surprised when you decided to become a doctor?
Yes, they were, actually, because I was such a rebellious anti-authority cuss. And I'll never forget my mom, my mother actually was dichotomous about physicians. She worked with a lot of physicians, and some of them she liked a lot, and some of them she couldn't stand. And in my last year of medical school, she told me, I always wanted you to be a physician, but I wasn't going to tell you because I knew if I told you, you wouldn't do it. So she was on to me from a very early age.
Did you play music as a kid?
I did. I took piano lessons. My dad told me if I quit, I would regret it. I quit, and I regret it. So I have a piano out in my living area, my condo, which I don't play.
Well, as a musician, I know that it's not an easy life, and I've had to do other things other than music. Music was not going to support me, and even though it was such a passion, and I don't think it supports too many people, although I have to admit that it supports more people now because of the internet and because you can sort of be your own boss, DIY your career.
Right.
There are a lot more working class musicians out there who have really mastered online and promotion and uploading all of their content, and they call them influencers, but there's musicians who are doing that same sort of thing, only with their music rather than with makeup tips or whatever else the influencers are doing. So it isn't more of an open market than when I grew up. When I grew up, you had to get a record deal and you had to do it the old way. But the point being is that it's not an easy life, and it's very difficult to make a living doing it.
Right.
So you probably made the right choice by.
Well, I had a sister. Unfortunately, she passed away 5 years ago. But she played the harp, and she had the toughest time making a living at it, and she was really passionate about it. And she made a total of 13 CDs, that she self-produced and sold, and she was just never able to make a living solely off of music. So I very much relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not an easy life at all. So do you have any plans to write another book? Or are you going to see how this one goes first?
I've already started.
You've already started? You want to give us a little a teaser of what it's going to be about?
I will tell you this, that it's a tragedy, and it has nothing to do with medicine. So,
all right.
Those are it's another story that I was planning on writing another book that had to do with medicine, not a sequel to this book, but just I have an idea for another book. But in the meantime, this story snuck up on me and grabbed me again. I guess I'm open season on good stories. At least I think it's a good story, and it took me. And I will tell you this, for me, and this happened with the first one, and it happens with this one. I'm very, how should I put it? I'm very conscious of the fact that I tell this story, so that there's a degree of self-doubt. Can I tell this story the way, and do it justice, tell the story in the way that it needs to be told? So even though I've really gotten a good start on it, I finished the outline, and it's a pretty lengthy outline. Both of my outlines have been pretty lengthy. I'm still in that phase that I don't know if I can give this story justice, but I'm going to try. And I'm also dedicated to the fact that this one's not going to take 12 years. So.
Well, that's encouraging. Okay. Well, anything else you want to add? Oh, let me ask you, do you have a website that you want to give out?
I do. It's Stanley M. Berry. Berry like the fruit, not B-A, but B-E. Stanley M. Berry, no spaces.com.
Okay.
And there's bio information there, and there's some media, some videos there, and there's buttons that lead to 2 online sellers. So anybody who buys my book makes me happy.
How's it doing? Are you getting any positive feedback or sales?
I got the first author blues. There are sales, but it's not robust, and people tell me that's what one can expect as an unknown first author, and I'm not at all stuck up about what I'm willing to do, because I've given author talks at several local libraries that are, sometimes attended by 5 people, sometimes by 12. I quite enjoy it. So, but we'll see. And I'm going to get this other one done, and who knows, maybe in the future, both of the sales will pick up.
Well, I hope so. Okay. Well, Dr. Berry, we got to wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming on this show, and best of luck with the book. I hope it does well, and we look forward to the next one coming out. Do you have a date yet for the new one, or no?
No, I don't. But I would like to thank you for inviting me and taking the time to interview me. It means a lot. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Are you an independent musician? How would you like to have your songs played on hundreds of radio stations just like the one you're listening to right now? Join MusicSubmit.com and we'll promote your music to radio stations and blogs in your genre. It's free to set up your account, and we guarantee your music will be considered for airplay by radio stations worldwide. Why not sign up today? It's free. MusicSubmit.com. Radio promotion for indie musicians.
Hey, this is Ray Powers. Don't touch anything. You've got it right where you need it. Tuned in to The Douglas Coleman Show. You heard me.
Okay, please welcome to The Douglas Coleman Show, Brian Collins. Hi, Brian. How are you?
I'm very well. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. Thank you for coming on the show. So you've got a book out called Step Off the Porch and Start Your Own Business. I was reading through this bio that was sent to me. It's very interesting. You and I kind of have similar backgrounds in the sense that we were working for somebody else and then at some point said, you know what, forget it, and we started our own. You did it about 12 years before I did. But what's interesting on here is that it said you started 4 different companies, right? Did you start them all at the same time?
No, they were spread out over 30 years.
Oh, so you did one and then another one. Okay. Can you tell us what the 4 companies are?
Sure. There's 4 separate businesses, and I started the first one when I was, 30. It was, I call it the takeover. It was 2 virtually bankrupt real estate companies that I was tasked to go and do an audit on because I'm an accountant auditor, and I did. And I worked for a large corporation in the mid-'80s called Century 21 Canada, which was, one of the major Century 21 divisions around the world. Century 21 was the biggest real estate company at the time. And so I went to audit these 2 near bankrupt real estate companies and found out that, the situation was actually worse than anybody thought. So I came back to my office, and the 4 vice presidents of the Century 21 Canada, knew that these companies were going to go down. They were going to get sued, and that lawsuit stuff would back up on the parent company that had 560-odd franchises in Canada. I drafted a solution in about 15 minutes about how to reincorporate the companies, a new company for real estate, a company that had all the debt and problems, and put one on top of the other, and it would still fly through the registration and bonding purposes, and presented that to my then boss, and he said, well, you need to go and do this because my 4 VPs couldn't come up with anything. So long story short, they sent me over to do it. I ended up buying those companies, and that was my first venture, and they were successful. I ran them for 2 years, sold them, then I went skiing.
It says on here that all started for less than $10. So you bought these 2 companies for $10?
Literally, after I fixed them and they were operating, again, I struck a deal with my then superior that should I want to come back, and I don't know why I did that I could buy them for $10. They were happy to A, fix the problem, B, not get sued, C, have the problem go away. And so I said, I'm holding you to this because I'd been hired away to be the CFO of a big sort of Canadian trucking air freight company that was owned by Consolidated Freightways in the States. And I was there about 8 months. I said, I can't do this anymore. I go to the office in the morning and I'm bored in 5 minutes. So I told my old boss that I'm buying these companies that I now fixed, and he was happy to sell them to me.
Well, that's pretty amazing. Do you currently still run that one, or did you sell that one and then go to the next?
No. I sold those out 2 years later, and then I moved on to the second venture. And these ventures, Douglas, I didn't know anything about turning around companies. I had no clue what to do, how to do it, where to start. All I knew is that, something had to happen fast, or it was just going to be, a sad story for the realtors that worked there, all the trades that were owed money, the tax department that was owed money, the landlord that was owed money, people that had bought debentures from the previous manager who was basically a crook. that was all going to go sideways. So, but I turned around and fixed them and, invigorated the company. Then all those problems got solved and paid, and then I could sell them 2 years later.
So what was the second one then?
The second venture, I was not sure what to do, so I always wanted to go to Hong Kong, and on my 34th birthday, I booked a trip over there, so I didn't go empty-handed. I took an option on some steel and concrete condos that were just starting construction and were in early sales on the waterfront in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, where I live. So I got an option on those condos, and I also was playing hockey Sunday morning in Vancouver with the boys that own Coast Hotel chain, and I was setting up the then president, who's 10 years my senior, making him look good on the ice, feeding him passes in front that he could tap in and do his dance. So he asked me what I was doing in Victoria, and I told him I was going to build a hotel on the waterfront. He said, well, there aren't any blocks on the waterfront. I know that because that's what we're trying to do. And I said, I tell you what, I'll sell you the information I have on a lot that I have information on. I'll flip it to you. And he said, done. So on Monday, I had my lawyer send a contract over and gave him the information. And 12 months later, he paid me over 6 figures for that piece of information. So then I went to Hong Kong in the same time period, and I got a person over there. I brought some brochures over, and never doing this before, didn't know anything about how you sell real estate in Hong Kong, particularly from another country. And I incorporated a company called 1997 Properties, Inc., because that's when Hong Kong reverted back to China from the British.
Right.
And long story short, I flipped a couple of the condominiums, some penthouses, came back, and made some more money out of that option piece of paper I had. And that was venture number 2. But again, knew nothing about it from the start. So I started making notes on the 6 rules that are in my book that I've coined that follow me through venture to venture to venture to venture. And so in my book, Douglas, I say to people, this is just 136 pages on how to help you get started. This isn't, 400 pages on the theory of economic graphs or slope or interchange or financing or any of those things. This is just how simple people that don't have a business degree, that want to start their own business. I've documented 4 separate businesses, all in separate arenas. All of them I knew nothing about, and I've been successful in all 4. And I have 6 rules that follow through the book, through the 4 ventures, and just help you on the straight and narrow. I talk about 10 or 12 business topics, finance, marketing, lawsuits, this and that, but the 6 rules are simple rules to follow. And anyway, so my third venture was, after that, I had a bit of a break, and my son was born. I thought, what am I going to do? So the internet in the late 90s was still an early thing. So literally driving to hockey again, I had this little brainstorm, and I heard a bit of a tickler of an ad on the radio. I said, well, you know what? I'm going to create an interactive voice response real estate marketing system. That at the time, you dialed up on a 1-800 line, and you could hear real estate ads in any city in Canada. You could hear 2 lawyers, plumbers, electricians, moving companies, insurance guys, whatever you need in those respective cities. And the realtors will advertise this for free because it's a marketing mechanism for them to help them get listings. The professional services will pay the freight and the cost. So I put that into action, and it worked successfully, and I grew that into 2 more businesses. I had a screen phone app business in Vancouver before people knew what apps were. And these are on desktop screen phones, not the handheld screen phones. And then I created the third product, which was phonenet.com, which was a way for dial-up computer users to contact the website owner to buy the golf club or the fishing boat or whatever they wanted through my system, because they had a direct connect button. You download it once, you could pick up your phone in your house, which shared your landline, and you could talk to that business, and because people didn't want to put their credit cards or other information online to buy things, but by talking to the business, you could get it ordered. They'll send it to you, but you still search them and found them online. So this is all early days of the internet, and that I took that public in the States. It was an OTCVB and fully reported company. The stock started at 6 cents, got up to about $8.50, and I had to step back from that about less than 2 years before the companies became public, because my then second wife, mother of my son, her cancer came back, so I had to take care of her, lost 6 months of her life, and basically just give her morphine shots. So I stepped back from that business and gave it to some guys to look after, and they completely screwed it up.
Well, you make it sound very simple. Was there ever any moments with these companies where you thought, what have I gotten myself into? Or was it just smooth sailing all the way through?
Every day. Multiple times in every day, Douglas. Every day. I had people say to me on every venture, starting with the real estate company, 4 vice presidents said to me, "You're just the auditor. You don't know something from something. You got no right stick in your nose in this." And I said, "Okay, well, we'll see what happens." Well, anyways, I think 2 of them got fired because they got paid a whole lot of money for doing nothing but drinking coffee. Anyways, every venture I've started, people have said to me, "Are you nuts? Like, don't walk away, run away." And then I know I'm on the right track because they're more afraid of their failures than they are of me succeeding. And a lot of people don't want to see you succeed. So I've said to a lot of people, like, the 2 biggest things you got to overcome to be an entrepreneur is, one, time. Time is the biggest issue. Okay, when tomorrow is here, you've lost today, and so on and so on. Once you start your venture, my rules will walk you through how to get to the finishing line. Most particularly, just one step at a time. But don't give up on your dream. You can always repackage, you can always reconfigure, you can always refinance, you can always reshuffle, but don't give up on your dream. Don't quit. That's my 4th rule. If you quit, your dream's over. It's done. And did I have problems? Yes. But as I explained, I had a sales meeting with my mining guys yesterday, and I explained to them, I said, I don't have a reverse gear. I never back up. I go forward. Sometimes you have to slow down. Sometimes you bump into speed bumps. Sometimes you got to go around the barrier. I don't have a reverse gear. And that's helped me get through 4 ventures. I mean, I now have 2 mining properties in Nevada, one that produced this year, another one's coming on. I'm just a little guy. I said, why not here? And how I found the claims and how I got it permitted and how I got everything up and operating. A lot of the big guys just scratch their head and they're going like, what you're doing is normally done by larger mining organizations. It takes them many, many years. They spend tens of millions of dollars every year just to get to the point where they can start. You did this on a shoestring, you did it on a tight budget, and you went through some problematic staff because where your mine's located. We've got 1.5 feet of snow there right now that they didn't have snow here for 10 years. So, you run into problems all the time, Douglas. But there's always ways to overcome them.
Well, do you think that the companies that have failed previously doing what you did successfully, do you think it was because, I know this is going to sound a little weird, but do you think it was because they had too much money or too many people so that the motivation wasn't there to actually make it go? There was too much bureaucracy, too much,
There's particularly in the mining business. I talked to a gentleman who was in Toronto, and Toronto's sort of the epicenter for public mining companies almost around the world. They probably own 60% of the mining companies that are operating in your country, your lovely country, which I love dearly. My mother had dual citizenship. My grandmother came from Iowa. I love working in your country. I just live in Canada. So I want to get that out there. I like Canada. I like living here, but I love working in your country. So I think a lot of the companies, case in point, so there's one gentleman, he had a public company, Toronto Stock Exchange, had a mining property. They raised $135 million, $135 million US. And they had these beautiful graphs and drilling programs and reports and, really slick website program. And I asked him, I said, how many ounces of gold have you made? He goes, what do you mean? I said, you raised $135 million from investors. How many ounces of gold have you made? He says, well, none. I said, well, you can't consider yourself a success because you basically just wasted $130 million. So many businesses and bigger businesses become, I don't want to say this in a negative fashion, but a small government agency.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, that it was just too bogged down.
There's too many rules, too many constraints. There's nobody that's thinking outside the box. You need somebody in your higher management group to turn their head a little bit 45-degree angle and look at the project from a different perspective. That's pivotal because that's where opportunities come from. Like everybody in their life, I believe everybody in your country that reads my book, 1 out of 10 of them has already thought of something that's a little bit different on any given topic, on any given subject, and there's an opportunity there for them to capitalize on that. But they need to know how to start. They need to know the confidence you can build when you step one step at a time. You know, I go to the gym 5 days a week. I always tell people there that are just starting, I said, don't worry about accomplishing something in 1 week or 2 weeks. Where do you want to be in a year? And when you stretch out the timeline, all of a sudden those mountains aren't so big, if you see what I'm driving at.
Yeah, I do. We've got just a couple minutes left, and I want to ask you about the 6 rules. Don't give them all because we want people to buy the book after all. You mentioned one was don't quit. Give us one more.
Okay, the first rule in the book is, this is because when I was finishing high school, I was a hockey player and a football player, and I almost lost my eye. I had to quit school in May of grade 12. I went and worked on a tie gang, and then I became a log rafter. My first rule is you have to be prepared to chop wood, literally chop cords of wood, all day long in the hot sun or the cold rain if you want to be your own business owner. If you have that kind of energy and that kind of passion, then you'll be successful. But if you think this is an 8 to 4, Monday to Friday, Monday to Thursday scenario, not going to work. My book, and I have a short, fast link for it. Can I give that to you, Douglas?
Wait till the end, and then we'll get your website.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyways, I would say categorically the first rule is you got to be prepared to chop wood all day long in the hot sun and the cold rain. That's an analogy. And on my website, there's actually a movie trailer, a book trailer that shows that. If they go to the site, they'll actually see my story there. And the fourth rule is don't quit. If you quit, your dream's over, and nobody's going to pick up the pieces. So, but the other rules, they're simple, they're easy to follow, and I firmly believe that almost everybody has a dream of what they like to do, whether it's a new donut shop or a hula hoop store or an ice cream parlor or whatever. There's a way to get there. And this little book, 136 pages, says, here's 4 ventures. You're not going to do any of these, but how you get there is almost the same. So I had to go through the same steps 4 times, okay? And because of that, people that have read my book and said, man, this is simple. I'm going to go and do blah, 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 blah. And I said, there you go. You're not going to do any of the things I did, but how you get there is going to be very repetitive. And my 6 rules keep you on the straight and narrow.
My guest is Brian Collins. The book is called Step Off the Porch and Start Your Own Business. Is the book out now?
Yes, it's been out 4 years, and there's a fast link to go to the website because most people, won't remember that handle. So can I give you the link?
Yeah, go ahead.
The number 6, so number 6, STEPBIZ.com. So 6stepbiz.com. And there's a book trailer on that website that spells everything else out there for you, how to think about starting your own business. And then, grab the book. You can get it electronically for under $10 or paperback under $20. And it's a fast 2-hour read, literally. And, everybody that's read it and come back to me just said, this has pointed me in the right direction.
Well, Brian, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing. This was very interesting.
Thank you, Douglas, for inviting me. I look forward to, answering any questions from anybody that's in your audience. Go to the site. There's a way to get a hold of me, and, I'm happy to discuss anything they need.
Well, best of luck with everything.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.